Episode 6. When Dragon Ball Instagram is posting something new from Daima that isn't the 50th repost of a manga comparison from episode 1, you know it was good. And was that thanks in part to actually having someone who knows how to place the camera above eye level and give a sense of three-dimensionality to a composition consistently, and uses arms and graphs to frame characters in interesting ways? Probably. It also helps when you just have some straight up sick animation and cool power-ups. And so I have to take off my Monster Energy snapback off to this episode's director and storyboard artist, Goku Yano. Personally, I think his parents should have swapped out that A for an O, but here we are. But he really does address my main complaint with the last few weeks, and that's consistency. You know, Suzuki could pull out some atmospheric shots here and there, but that was kind of the thing, it was here and there, whereas Yano just doesn't stop. Like, take the Minotaur appearance, red rim lighting around his body that perfectly contrasts to the blue, which Yano really makes use of to give this cave a distinct feel, but you also have that simple fundamental of using colors to express emotions. Red translates as aggressive and dangerous, blue, calmness. Even composition, like, let's break this down in Photoshop. So first, clear focal point, well designed. That's partly done through color ratio, so 95% of everything is blue, or at least tinted blue. Then the remaining 5% is red, so it creates this really strong contrast. Your eye is drawn straight to the Minotaur. It's actually a common thing you'll see painters and illustrators do a lot, like one of my favorites, Ramon, pink in the middle and like a blue tint to almost everything else. Back to this, there's also a lot of bright blue down here, which in turn contrasts pretty heavily to the pitch black background. If you split the composition in half, you can kind of make out this clear divide, which draws you to the secondary focal point. And finally, scale. This has been my biggest complaint of Yoshima's storyboarding post episode 1, because that was great. Yano actually brings the camera down so the enemy is towering over. Like, of course, you know, he isn't doing anything groundbreaking, but it is refreshing. As I said, his use of color to give each area or section of an episode a distinct atmosphere is just really consistent. Like, he could have easily made the little fight between Glorio and Goku at night or midday, but instead goes for morning with this light purple haze like drenching the environment and characters, and by doing that you naturally create, once again, strong contrast. Because you have more darker values against lighter values, which makes Glorio's cool magic beam attacks and Goku's Super Saiyan transformation stand out a lot more. If it was daytime, you know, going back into Photoshop, you can see how the values are much lighter, and then we flick back to the beams, they're kind of around the same. So it doesn't create as much of a strong contrast. In general, I really can't get enough of color work like this, and of course, equal credit to the compositing staff and art directors, which are the ones that actually bring these ideas to life. And yeah, I really do love these types of shots. After all, they are kind of what made me fall in love with Daima from episode 1. Like, take this piece. If you had shown me this shot like 2 years ago and said this is from an upcoming Dragon Ball movie, I would have believed you. Again, it's the perfect mix of good composition, lighting, and color. Bless up Yano. Now for the actual fight, and I know I'm getting maybe a bit repetitive with saying this, but we're 6 episodes in now and the staff are still putting out solid choreographed action week to week. Like, it's such a contrast to Super, where you might get like a burst here and there by like Naotoshi Shida or Naoki Tate, and even in those cases you still can spot a bit of iffy artwork or compositing because of like how rushed everything was. A pre-Tournament of Power arc, that is. There was some pretty good stuff on the regular there. Or even back like in Dragon Ball Z, you know, you might have a studio cockpit episode with like cool expressive drawings and movement. Then it's a Last House one and you're back to sluggish animation and poorly drawn art. Then Ebisawa is like, hold my beer, let me give this man a 5 head. Like, you know, I ain't saying anything new, but it truly is refreshing to see so many polished and appealing drawings on a regular basis, which we definitely have to thank this episode's animation director for, Takumi Yamamoto, and Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, who sits as the series' chief animation director. Like, it doesn't have me saying, look so sexy, yummy with caps lock on, but it's close enough. Now, the first part is animated by Sanda. He was last on episode 3, and unlike last week where I was talking about Kozue and her Yoshinori Kaneda inspired animation that revolves around modulated timing and wide spacing to create snappy movement, this is kind of the opposite. The spacing is very tight between drawings, timing is quite uniform, and sits fairly high with characters animated on 1s and 2s, so in some cases a new drawing every frame. which gives a more smoother motion. Then Glorio pulls out his magic and its effects animation, which becomes the main highlight now. And a bit of a swap up, instead of tight spacing, everything's wide, which helps to give that erratic and unruly feeling to the lightning bolts. And man, they look beautiful. The way effects are composited in Daima are leaps and bounds over Super. Like, take this shot from the Future Trunks arc of some purple-like beams. Now this isn't bad, but you can see the improvement in clarity and appeal. The middle section is transparent with a hard white edge. The outer glow effect is set to like a blend option. Then there's a second layer again with like blue painted around the purple. Whereas Super, it simply isn't. The outer and inner glow has a bit of an airbrush look, which does make everything look a bit flatter. And for some effects, they're just blurred out entirely. Sorry, Tate. But it's also the way the environment reacts, like how the shadows are very animated and reflect the light source, and all the color shifts flickering from purple to blue, which is what makes everything look so nice. It's that variety. Like going back to that scene from Super, you can see from when the beam misses Vegeta, and when he fires his own blast, the way he's lit up doesn't change. It's the same base color regardless of the light source. Now, a couple of cuts later, it does reflect that when Vegeta gets hit, but it does demonstrate that difference in polish, and is just another one of the numerous examples of what happens when you don't give staff time to finish episodes. It's not just the animation and drawing quality that suffers, it's every department. And thankfully for us and all the hard-working staff that have to work on these shows, we don't have that problem for Daima. Anyways, beam attacks are nothing special in Dragon Ball by this point, but in this case, it did feel a little special. And that's just through visual presentation alone. But that especially goes for Goku going Super Saiyan. It starts off with Super Saiyan aura covering Goku's arm first, then moves to his whole body, but it's also the way the hair gradually fades from black to yellow, which then follows up after for the eyes, with this cool transition of using a rock to like frame the switch, and then the final bit of having all the rocks suspended in the air before falling back down. It actually reminds me a little of Gohan transforming at the tournament. Then after it's Takumi Yamamoto. I do like how he applies principles like slow in and slow out. So like how the effects move quick and erratic, then slow down, then again quick at the start, then slow down before the quick release. It gives a smooth and a stylish flair to the attack. Then the snappy pullout, very similar to how he animated Bardock's final attack in Broly. Great layout as well, a lot of depth to the composition, and the color work is crazy. There's some really unique lighting choices here. I particularly like the one where they like switch to black and white for the background. And then finally, just a lot of long cuts with slow motion to really frame the cool and powerful factor to Goku. It also seems Nakatsu corrected a lot of the drawings as well, which definitely is the icing on top. Overall, this episode, similar to the first one, is a good representation of when every department is on point. There was also a lot of grounded approaches to color design, which I haven't really talked about for the sake of time, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And there was just a lot of great composition and great art at all times. Also, it's the first episode in Daima that actually has the episode director also storyboarding. But yeah, that's my final note. Thanks for watching. Check out the sponsor TT Aesthetic for all things Dragon Ball. And thank you as always to my patrons. Sorry for forgetting to shout you guys out in the last one. But with that, thank you again, and I'll see you later.